you had a very unique experience of getting to see what Kobe is like up close and personal. You got to work with him, particularly for the first time, I believe, in 2007 at the Kobe Bryant Skills Academy. Now, I've always been fascinated, by the Mamba mentality, by, the things that he stands for. For me, Kobe was like the greatest of all time, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with Jordan. I didn't grow up with LeBron. LeBron came a little bit later. But the thing about Kobe too was that no matter what, broken thumb, torn ACL, he shot free throws on an ACL, he always showed up. Now, I want to know from your perspective, what was that opportunity like to experience Kobe up close? And in your eyes, what is the Mamba mentality?
Well, I think you just nailed a big portion of the Mamba mentality, and that is you always show up, and you show up ready to compete, and you show up ready to be the best version of yourself. And, we can leave it to the talking suits on ESPN to argue who the best player of all time is. We don't even need to get into that. But I don't think anyone can argue that he got every ounce of his potential out and left it on the floor. And for the reasons that you just described, he was going to play through some massive injuries. He was going to play whether the Lakers were on top of the world and winning championships or when they were struggling and they had a younger team and they were tough. He never hid from an opportunity to compete. And I do think that is a big part of the Mamba mentality. But the other part of that, which I think is even more exceptional for him, was his ability to prepare to compete. He wasn't just Kobe Bryant when the lights came on and the cheerleaders started dancing and the TV cameras started rolling. He did so much more during the unseen hours that preceded that, so that he was prepared to perform at the highest level possible. And, he would work all hours of the day and night. He would focus on mastering the basics and the fundamentals. There was never anything that was beneath him. And it was all done in order to win. It's funny because unfortunately, many people had pegged him as a selfish player. And I actually don't think he was a selfish player. I think he did whatever he needed to do for the team to be successful. And for many of the teams he was on, that meant he was the number one scoring option. I mean, they needed him to take 20 to 25 shots a game in order for them to have a chance. So I think he was a brilliant competitor, someone that really appreciated the preparation process. And I think when you put all of that together, that's where you start to develop this Mamba mentality, which certainly was second to none. And there's no question, I could rattle off a dozen players right now, and I never would because I don't believe in diminishing people, but a dozen players that if they had just a fraction of the Mamba mentality, they would have been Hall of Famers. And instead, they were just mediocre players at best. So his mentality is the reason that he's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time players.
Right. And you tell this incredible story, and you've told it many times, about kind of meeting Kobe at the gym early in the morning. And I know you've said it so many times, but I just think every time I hear it, it's extremely powerful. And can you explain what happened that morning that you got to see Kobe Bryant work out?
Yeah, in 2007, when I worked his Kobe Bryant Skills Academy, I had an opportunity to go watch him at a really early morning workout. It was so early that I got to the gym at 3:30 and thought I would beat him to the gym. And he was already in the gym in a full sweat. And this is 3:30 in the morning, mind you. And I just remember being so surprised that he was working on very basic movements and very basic fundamentals. He spent the first 10 minutes without a ball doing a variety of footwork and pivoting drills. And, the next 10 to 15 minutes, he never took a shot. He was doing different exercises and drills to square up to the basket and make sure he was always on balance and use either foot. And I just remember being amazed that the best player in the world was willing to be committed to doing such basic movements. And it gave me such a strong appreciation and respect for him, but for in my own life, making sure that I'm always sticking to the fundamentals. And at camp later that day, when I asked him and point blank said, you're the best player in the world, why are you doing such basic drills? His answer was, well, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? Because I never get bored with the basics. And I just remember sitting there thinking, wow, this is somebody that is the best in the world at his craft, truly mastered his craft. And his secret is that he doesn't get bored with the basics. And I think anyone listening to this, if you're being honest, you would admit that many times the basics can be boring. They get monotonous, they get mundane. And it's the temptation to skip over them is very appealing. But if you want to be great at something, you've really got to press down on those fundamentals. And I've tried to take that with me in everything that I do. whether it's writing a book or speaking on stage, I realize that the only way I can get good at either one of those things is if I respect the basics and really stay true to the fundamentals.
I'm super curious about that, and such an incredible and powerful lesson. But you're right. Like, we do get bored. I know for me in particular, like, I know it's important to do, for example, resistance training, but I do get bored of weights pretty quickly. I like playing sports. I like to box. I like MMA. Like, those are the things that I like to get up and do. I like to skip. But that's why I'm always transitioning from different types of workouts all the time, is because different things activate me at different moments in time. However, I think there's a it's important to be able to do things that you don't necessarily enjoy or that you get bored of. How do you go about coaching people through that and kind of pushing them towards creating a sustainable routine for things that we're bored of? Is it about making it enjoyable, or is it about just kind of sucking it up and taking it forward?
It's a little bit of everything. First and foremost, everyone is going to have a different way of how they perceive that. So the way that I would recommend someone do it, I'd first have to get to know them and what are their true motivations and what is the best way to push their buttons. But keep in mind too, you don't necessarily have to love the thing that you're doing if you love what that thing enables you to do enough. And I think that's probably even the way that Kobe looked at it, although that's pure speculation because I never asked him. I'm not implying that he loved doing pivoting drills without a ball. I am implying that he loved having flawless footwork, which allowed him to do some pretty incredible things on the basketball court, which allowed him to win games and win championships and make a lot of money. So he liked the end result that those things allowed him to do. In your case, you might not like the actual act of strength training, but you might really like the way that it makes you look, or the way that it makes you feel, or how it actually increases your ability to do MMA or to box or to do some of the other things that you really like. If you realize that, hey, if I take 30 minutes a day and I do these these strength workouts, it allows me to be better at the thing that I really love doing. And I think if you focus more on that and less on what you actually have to do, so you're not viewing it as manual labor, that's a part of it. The other thing is, I'm a big believer in doing little things over time will give you a big result. So, in Kobe's case, if you do 15 minutes of basic footwork every day, your footwork will get really, really good. We're not talking about doing, 4 hours of pivoting drills. He did it for 15 minutes, but he does that every single day of his life. Same thing. If you were to do and I'm just obviously making this up, 100 push-ups and 30 pull-ups and 50 air squats every day, that might take you 15 minutes to do it. But if you do those most days of the week, you would start to see an increase in your muscular fitness and endurance. And certainly, if you love MMA and boxing enough, you're willing to make that sacrifice for 15 minutes a day. So I think it's just on how you choose to view it and how to perceive it. And, the other thing is, you can also not only focus on loving the outcome of it, but you can also learn to love improvement. Who doesn't like to get better at something? One of the reasons we usually get pretty stale with something is because we stop seeing progress. If you know that every day that you go in the weight room for the next couple of months, you're going to eke out an extra rep or add a little bit of weight to the bar, for a lot of people, that improvement actually keeps them going. That's their competitiveness, and say, hey, last workout I did 7 pull-ups. I'm going to get 8 today. No matter what it takes, I'm going to get 8 pull-ups today. And so while they may not enjoy pull-ups, they do love that competitiveness with themselves.
No wonder you're a mindset coach. Like, I'm listening to what you're saying, and you're so right. Like, even for me, for example, this podcast, like, my favorite part about doing the podcast is this, just having the one-on-one conversation, and then having the episode released when it does, and putting it into the world. I don't necessarily enjoy the editing. I don't necessarily, enjoy putting together all the graphics, but I know it leads to that episode, which gives me satisfaction. So that's such a great way of putting it. And I actually haven't thought about it that way necessarily before.